The Walking Dead, Season 9, Episode 4. Okay, so things are moving forward. It still feels a little monotonous to me. And we're still dealing with Rick's desire to hold Negan prisoner. Obviously, no one is down with that, as we saw with what happened with Oceanside last week. I think Rick has always had it in the back of his mind that, this is a difficult project. But he has been determined to power his way through it, no matter what anyone has to say to him, no matter what Daryl thinks, no matter what Maggie thinks, Carol thinks, no one. And I think that's because Rick is always ruled by sort of force of will, force of personality. People have just, generally speaking, followed him, and it's been very rare when he's had any kind of opposition within the group itself. As you recall, I think the last time Rick had any real opposition is when they first arrived in Alexandria, and he couldn't drop his suspicions and sort of blend in and try to build a life. He was still in warrior mode. And so there was some pushback, with Michonne even punching him out in the middle of the street, right? When he started frothing at the mouth. This case is a little bit different. This is Rick now. He's learned all the lessons of Alexandria, and now he's wanting to build this new world. And the greatest symbol to Rick is this bridge. This bridge represents peace, turning the page, a return to law and order. But every step along the way, there are these blocks, and now we have nature chiming in to make the bridge even more difficult. At this point, however, things are coming to a head. So Maggie is on her way to Alexandria because she's ready to kill Negan. And Rick tries to stop her, and this does not go well. He ends up in a pit with Daryl. And for the first time, we actually see these two go at it, where they're open and honest about his feelings and about their feelings. And Daryl pretty much calls Rick Ahab. Like he's chasing this whale, and he's gotta let Carl go. This is about so much more than Carl. This is about justice, and none of them can live with it. And I think that it's Daryl's position that Rick should have trusted that killing Negan didn't mean that the plan that he wanted for civilization wouldn't happen. It would just mean that the people who fought with him and bled with him would have the justice that they seek. On the other side, we have Michonne. Michonne is clearly trapped in Alexandria under the mantle of leadership. The scene opens up, and you see her doing her bit, getting up, feeding Judith, visiting people, getting report on what the plants are doing, all this and that. And there's this slow building resentment in Michonne. It's not that she doesn't know that this work is important, but there's a part of her that resents it. What I did find an interesting twist is that Negan goes on a hunger strike, and Michonne, being the leader at Alexandria in Rick's absence, has to, of course, feed Negan. And so she goes down to his little jail cell and to talk to him. Why this is interesting to me is in the comics, the two people that you see interacting with Negan while he's in jail are, of course, Rick and Carl. And while Rick and Carl hate him, they develop this sort of weird understanding between them, and a relationship of sorts, and you can see this is something that they're just trying to bring in the show using Michonne instead of Rick, and obviously Carl, who's dead. And being imprisoned is starting to make Negan a little cagey. It's interesting to watch him play with words, because it's a reminder that what Negan achieved wasn't only by violence, but also by force of will. There's a lot of similarity between Rick and Negan, even if neither side will actually admit it to the other. In the end, Negan isn't able to play Michonne as well as he would like, and he doesn't get the one thing that he wants, which is his bat, and he starts bashing his head up against the wall. I'm curious to see how far they're going to take Twisted Negan. I think it should be interesting. I think Jeffrey Dean Morgan is an actor that will make this this descent a very interesting thing to watch. Um, on the other side, we have Anne and, of course, Gabriel. I'm still calling it. I still think Gabriel is going to die soon. This sudden twist where Gabriel is talking and he's not just showing up to say, Rick, you're God and I love you, usually spells death for a character on The Walking Dead. Anne escapes and she ties up Gabriel, leaving him behind to go wherever it is she's going, wherever the helicopter people are. I don't for one minute think that we've seen the last of Anne, but I do think we're getting close to seeing the death knell for Gabriel, because that's always been the thing on The Walking Dead with characters of color. They're always characters for the most part, with very few exceptions like Michonne and Tyrone. And I do think that we're going to see the end of Gabriel soon. Maybe it'll happen when the whole thing with Anne comes to a head. So, at the building site, which Rick isn't ready to give up on yet, the Saviors come back and they want revenge. They have figured out that it is Oceanside. Unfortunately, it's Carol that's there in the kingdom that is there dealing with this, and they have managed to somehow get their hands on guns, and it's a head-to-head stare-off. And I found myself watching as this man sort of called Carol a little woman, told her that she wasn't in charge and to get out of the way. I was like, oh, you're cute. You really don't know who you're playing with yet. And of course, the minute he lets his guard down, Carol goes on the attack. Several shots go off, so we don't really know what happened in this situation, but there's no way that Carol did not end up on top. And for me, even though it was only a small part of this episode, it was the best part of this episode. Seeing Carol be awesome and do what Carol does, to me, is like one of the best parts of The Walking Dead. She is the character that has grown the most and changed the most since we first met her. Carol is full of awesome. More Carol and less man angsting. Anyway, the whole thing ends up with Rick trying to, lead the herd in another direction. And of course, he's on a horse, which is kind of reminiscent of season one, because as we know, that's how Rick traveled at first, right? He traveled by horse. That's how he rode into the city in a horse. And he gets caught between two herds, and the horse bucks, throws him off, and he lands on a piece of rebar. When we last see him, Rick is unconscious. So a lot of foreshadowing in this season is about the fact that, of course, we know Rick Grimes is going to die because Andrew Lincoln is leaving the show, and we also know that Maggie is leaving the show. I don't for one minute believe that they're going to blow Rick Grimes' death in episode 4. There's no way that's going to happen. This is going to be, when Rick dies, it's going to be a big moment. It's going to be mid-season finale. So this feels very anticlimactic to me. We know that Maggie's out there roaming around on her way to Alexandria, and I would bet money that it's Maggie who saves him from this horde. I don't for one minute think that this is Rick's end. They're going to want to use Rick's end for the most shocking thing possible. I believe they're probably going to drag it out over 2 episodes. To just throw it in there like that, yeah, you don't have me on this one. Not at all. And that's, again, also the problem of putting a character like Rick in peril. You show people the gun, eventually you have to fire. And because The Walking Dead has become so predictable as to when they cannibalize their cast, you can sort of look at this and understand that the gun is not going to be fired. It's just being waved at you once again. Disappointing, but that's the way The Walking Dead is. So I guess we're going to have to wait till next week to see how Rick gets out of the situation and if he's able to dissuade Maggie from killing Negan.